Good morning. Good morning. It's Tuesday. It's the AM version of the Georgia Show. I'm Jake Rowe. He's Rusty Mansell. We are from DawgsHQ, and we're excited to be here this morning because there's a lot to talk about. There always is. This is Georgia. There's so much going on. And Rusty, you reported over 24 hours ago at this point at our site that Georgia's coaching staff was going to be on the road yesterday, seeing some big time targets. You could have get more detail over at DawgsHQ, but just kind of fill us in on what happened yesterday and where the coaches were mainly that number one main spot they were at.
Well, I think one that was kind of interesting to me was Tay Harris, defensive back from Cedartown, decommitted on Sunday, picked up Clemson offer last night. He went to Georgia Tech. He's been to Florida. He's made a couple of visits here lately, but Kirby Smart shows up yesterday at Cedartown. The old Kirby copter lands there, and the social media, Cedartown football put up a pretty cool picture. Kirby was standing beside Chubb's jersey in the weight room, and so it kind of tells you that this is a kid they're not giving up on. This is a kid they're gonna love up, and he's an in-state corner, and they like him, and that's going to be one of those. In my opinion, Georgia and Cedartown, obviously, there's a lot of connections there, and so that one too. Now, pretty big in-home visit last night. The last, I would say, remaining 2024 target, Terry Bussey, athlete, defensive back, wide receiver out of Texas, who's committed to Texas A&M. We confirmed Glenn Schuman, Dante Williams, and T-Rob were in home with him last night. So that means they get one more visit. You get two in this period. Plus, he's on an official visit this weekend in Athens. So technically, Georgia can be in front of him two more times. I would expect Kirby Smart at some point to be in home with him next week, even after coming this week. So they're taking a shot there. A lot of questions on what does Georgia like him at. Played wide receiver, Under Armour game, but, talking to everybody, my people in Athens, it is definitely a defensive back, maybe even a safety corner position. He is certainly open to that, and I don't think that that's going to hurt Georgia if they do get him at some point to say, hey, you're going to play safety or even corner. They like those DBs that can run. And I had a chance to watch some of that Polynesian Bowl that night. He played in Hawaii in that game. He had a pick. I think he might have had two picks. And you can just tell he's different. So, that'll be kind of yesterday. You see Stacy Searles at Josh Petty School of Fellowship Christian as a 2025 tackle. And what's different is so different, Jake, because we've been covering this a long time. You get to see these guys, they're kind of posing with the players now, the pitchers. And they're able to have that contact.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. The contact, like Tay Harris took a selfie yesterday with Kirby Smart. He posted it on his social media. So it's just different. I've heard different feedback from college coaches, what they like, what they don't like about it. They don't like that you only get two hits during this time. And from what I understand, it used to be like if Kirby Smart came to see Jake Rowe at 7:30 at Jefferson High School in the morning,
he wouldn't waste his time.
Well, I'm just saying when Kirby Smart was there, and just say that Glenn Schuman's recruiting you. Well, Glenn Schuman could go back that afternoon. You can be there as much as you want during that day. Well, from my understanding now, when Kirby Smart walks in that building and Glenn Schuman's in there, that's your hit. So when y'all walk back out, you're done for the day. So
you're burned. Yeah,
it's a little different there, but I think that being able to sit down in front of them. One thing I was corrected on. I was under the impression you get a 30-minute time limit with each prospect. You don't. It's as long as you want to sit there and talk. So, it's definitely interesting, definitely different, but it gets out that stupid bump rule that everybody used to try to correct and get schools. Georgia got turned in on bump rules. Alabama got turned in on bump rules. I've seen coaches 10, 12 years ago sit in the hallway and try to snap a picture of a kid, in with another coach, you know what I mean? Gonna try to turn that school in. It just kind of senseless. Let the guys visit with the kids for a few minutes and fill them out. And I think this is great, Jake, because the recruiting calendar has sped up so much. These January visits with a coach in front of you, they're important.
Yeah, they're important pre-home deals. I remember, and I'll mention the coach because he's retired now, and one of my favorite dudes always to run in on I've actually mentioned him a few times. Dan Brooks, who worked at Clemson. I ran into him and Robbie Caldwell at an unnamed high school about 7-8 years ago, And they saw, the old kid came into the weight room and they gave him a big hug and talked to him for 30 minutes. And I was in there talking to the head coach, and then they circled back around the coach's office, and both of them looked at me and said, "You didn't see anything." And I said, I didn't see anything. I'm blind as a bat, dude.
Yeah.
And it was those were two of the best dudes ever to run into at a high school. That's something honestly I miss about hitting the road during spring evaluation period and all that stuff is not running into those coaches. But yeah, that was a stupid rule because everybody circumvented it and everybody bitched and moaned about it. And it became one of those deals that you were just kind of like, guys, let's just open this up and let them spend time with the kids. Bring all your prospects in, let them meet them, let them hang out with them, whatever. I mean, and like you said, with the recruiting calendar now, with you being able to take official visits in June, it's probably more important than it's ever been because it's harder to get the kids on campus in June to actually meet and spend time with those coaches and formulate that relationship that's going to carry over into those official visits that are during the fall. So, you're right. That is something that has stood out to me. I'm like, man, I'm not used to seeing, all these, arms around each other and everything like that, and all the camaraderie here this early in the year. This is supposed to be evaluation period, and it's not anymore.
I was in South Georgia maybe 2 years ago. I was in South Georgia 2 years ago, and there was a school that had 3 coaches, and they had the kid cornered up in the coach's office. And when I walked in, I mean, dude, you would have thought they all dove under a desk. I was like, hey, guys, I don't see y'all, and you don't know me, and I wouldn't have had to rat them out. But, man, you would have thought they were like, oh, my God, But glad that's done now to fool that mess.
You were talking about Terry Bussey, and one thing I want to point out to Georgia fans, like I think Rusty and I and Jake Roos and Jeremy Johnson, Chad Simmons, all of us in On 3 probably have the same read on this situation. Is Georgia's probably a little bit of a long shot at this point. Like it feels like some other teams are ahead, but there's 2 things, really 3 things you need to keep an eye on. And the last one I think is the most important. Number 1, they went in home last night, so they feel like they're in it. To whatever degree, they feel like they've got a shot.
Dante Williams.
Yeah. Number two, they're going to get him on campus for an official visit. And that's important because number 3, you hear anything about Michael Looney before he took his official visit to Georgia, other than the fact that he was taking an official visit to Georgia? Because Michigan and Alabama were going to be real tough to beat. Long shot, probably not going to happen. Real tough to beat. And when Georgia got him on campus for an official visit, that worm turned, and Georgia made a move for him. It's not out of the question for them. Listen, it doesn't happen every day. It doesn't happen constantly. But you get a guy on for an official visit, you got a puncher's chance, especially if you're at a school like Georgia.
Think about this, Jake. He'll be the only one there. He'll be the only recruit there. So, I mean, he'll be the only one on official visit. So you're talking about the red carpet, the complete red carpet from the entire staff. So, it's just so weird. We've covered it so long. You start thinking about those January OVs and like these last 2 weekends, it used to be like 8-10 kids a piece. But it was go time. You know what I mean? And now we're sitting here in the month of January going, yeah, they might sign 1 kid in high school.
Yeah.
Take a shot at this guy.
Yeah. That's the new calendar. And honestly, it's
hard to even remember that now. It really is hard because June has become such an important.
I like it though. I like those official visits in June. I kind of dig them a little bit. I really do.
Yeah, it makes the June. What they say, June visits makes July decisions.
Yeah, and boy, oh boy, did we have one of those this past year. Georgia fans soon forget the funny thing is for years and years and years, and I say that for 3 or 4 years, June and July were kind of boring. And then the season would get here and Georgia would just start reeling them in. And then last couple of weeks before signing day, they'd get them and they'd close strong. And it felt great. Well, the past couple of years, especially this year, man, there was 2 weeks in July, Rusty. We pre-recorded videos for about 5-6 different commitments in a 10-day span.
5 commitments while I was on vacation.
Yeah.
5 commitments.
4 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman.
Yep.
And we had them ready. We had them ready, before you headed out there.
They spaced them out every day, every afternoon. I'd come up from the beach or come up from the cooler and whatever was going on. And here we go, guys. This one's going to pop at 4. But it's good. Yeah, it really is good.
All right. So looking forward to kind of staying in the recruiting realm. I heard a comment. I've heard a few comments like this, Rusty, that kind of, and I wanted to get your take on it. Obviously, I don't want to spend 10 minutes on this, but there's this thought that, the idea of coaches, we've talked about coach burnout and all that stuff, but there's this thought that coaching, the type of coach that's successful might change in the future. And it's the idea that, all right, well, everybody's buying players now, NIL, all that stuff. So, that's going to take care of talent acquisition. You need great coaches, great schemers, people who can X's and O it to death. Rusty, I couldn't disagree more, because when everybody's getting paid, it's still going to come down to the relationships. It's still going to come down to which guys can develop and which guys can sell their vision to you. I don't think anything changes in recruiting with NIL becoming a bigger factor or not. And oh, by the way, maybe NIL is not going to be a bigger factor going forward with this unionization. And that's not really our area of expertise. But I think we've learned over the years that things don't exactly change the way we think they're going to change either.
Roster management. I mean, that is, can you get good players and can you keep good players? And that's going to be the teams. Georgia is a school that, Georgia's a school that is competitive in NIL. They recruit relentless. They just had the #1 class again in recruiting. And let me keep this straight. If you're not competitive in NIL, you're not going to sign the #1 class. I don't care how good of sale you have. You have got NIL is a part of today's college football world. But I think what Georgia fans are kind of skipping over as we get into this NIL stuff is roster management and what they have done to keep that roster intact for the most part in Athens and head into because we always hit on this. And I think, just give you my this is Rusty Mansell's opinion, that Georgia didn't spend a ton in the transfer portal. They spent a ton keeping their roster. And those guys that don't make no mistake about it. They were big time players in Athens that were about to get in that portal, and Georgia did what they needed to do, and they kept those players, and that is going to be huge as this season goes on. And I think that some other schools are having to go way beyond to build a roster, and all this is new to us. So we're going to find out. Texas A&M took the model a couple of years ago that they're going to get the #1 recruiting class in the country, and they're going to sign all these kids. And 2 years later, that staff got fired, and those kids are spread out all over the country. So Georgia has signed 2 or 3, at least the top class, #2 class, whatever, continuously the last 3 or 4 years. And they've been very successful in how they're handling this situation. We're all learning. So, but with Georgia's philosophy, it is to roster management. And I think the point you're making, Jake, is those relationships. So those kids are like, I trust this guy. I trust Kirby Smart. I trust Stacey Searles. I trust Mike Bobo. I trust these guys to get this thing done and get me there. So I made a comment yesterday on an Ask Rusty recruiting chat on our message board, and I stand by that. Georgia has done well with kids that value development over 100% NIL. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is, if it's only about NIL, Georgia's probably not the place for you.
Yeah.
But if you're going to get some NIL and you think, man, I got to change, and listen, don't think that wouldn't happen in Alabama with Nick Saban, because kids were trusting that they went and played for Nick Saban. They were going to be a high draft pick if they made it, and they were going to be successful. So Georgia's getting some of that with Kirby Smart as well and his staff. These guys are, I don't know all the facts, 100%. Don't know the facts, but I will guarantee you that Justin Williams was offered a hell of a lot more money to go other places than University of Georgia, and he's coming to Georgia because he trusts Glenn Schuman, and he trusts what Glenn Schuman has been producing, and the long term. He's playing the long game with this, and those are the kids that Georgia's been very successful, and I think that's why they ended up with another #1 class. And I do think that's why their roster is considered by many the number one roster in college football because they did a hell of a job of keeping that thing together.
Tell you what, you mentioned Justin Williams. There's some significant buzz about him as a person, as a player, as a
top 10 in his class. He was top 10 in his class academically.
Yeah, I'm telling you, there's some there's some early N'Kobe Dean, Nolan Smith vibes with Justin Williams, just in what you're hearing. But you're right, man. I mean, listen, it really is about those relationships, and obviously NIL is what it is. But if you're gonna level the playing field for the most part and look at who's everybody's able to dole out a little money to these guys, then relationships are still going to matter. You're still going to have to win one-on-one battles with schools that may pay a little bit more or pay the same as you. So that's a big part of it. And another thing I'll point out, you look at the 4 teams in the playoff this year. The retention was massive for every one of them. Washington, Roma Dunze could have. I mean, come on, man. He could have been playing anywhere else.
Super senior quarterback.
Yeah, he could have been playing anywhere else. They added some important pieces, Dylan Johnson and Michael Penix through the transfer portal. I get it.
Yep.
But retaining, Roma Dunze and the McMillan kid and some of those really good defensive players that people were trying to vulture off that roster over the past couple of years. Michigan, same thing. Very, very veteran retention.
45 seniors.
Alabama, same thing, like retaining players from last year, some really good players, adding some pieces. But even Texas, who I guess people would consider a big NIL team, right? They still had to hold on to some key pieces. They still had to try and figure out how to manage that roster and keep them around. Even Florida State, which did add heavily via the transfer portal, keeping Jordan Travis around for 5 years was massive for them. Got them rolling. You got Georgia. You're looking at the top 6 right there. All of those have at least one thing in common, and the two that I think you would consider more heavily NIL. Listen, there have been 12 slots in the college football playoff, 3 years, 12 slots in the college football playoff since it began since not the college football playoff began, but since NIL began. I think you could maybe look at Texas as a big money NIL program, and that's fine. Do it the way you want to do it. It's within the rules.
No doubt.
But Texas is the only one I think you would really point to and say, hey, they spend a lot on NIL. And that's it.
We're about to find out Ohio State because
we're about to find out.
Ohio State with getting Trayvon Henderson back, Emeka Buka, Jack Sawyer, Quinshon Junkins. It is. You talking about a team that's all in, but they did get Caleb Downs. Obviously, let's not sugarcoat that. But what you look at what they had coming back. Because I would have Trayvon Henderson coming back was mind blowing to me. Like, you know what I mean? A running back, like you go now, and get your carries in. But that is a hell of a roster as well, as you start talking about. But you look at the other side of the NIL, they had roster management, and then they added some pieces. So it's going to be, that's going to be another kind of case study. How does that work out for them? They had to go get a quarterback. They're going to bring a quarterback in this situation that this never started there. So there's some variables as well.
I'm interested to see how it works out because, Will Howard, talented kid, is he the right guy? And then did they fix their offensive line issues because they had them last year? Those are two things to figure out. I got to say, though, man, and listen, I'm not throwing any shade when I say this, but there's something about Ross Bjork, who that man's got the key to something because he unlocks war chests wherever he goes. Ole Miss before it was legal, Texas A&M with that number 1 recruiting class, and then now Ohio State. Man, he
gave Jimbo what, $80 million?
Yeah, the money starts flowing. Hey, let's get a DawgsHQ get together and see if we can invite Ross Bjork to it. Maybe the money just follows that man around.
What does Jimbo Fisher do? Waking up every morning with $80 million, like.
Well, I do know that he's got a girlfriend. I'm not sure if they're official, like married or whatever yet. I know he's got a girlfriend about 30 years younger than him, so I'm pretty sure she keeps him hopping.
Well, I saw the first like 40 million had to be paid within like the first 50 days. So that dude,
I don't know if they'd be able to find me to spend the rest of it, to pay me the rest of it.
They'd have your direct deposit.
Yeah. They'd have to put it in an account I'd get to later. I'd disappear $40 million.
That dude is not waking up worried about his power bill ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. He
He
worried. Yeah. He can bump that AC down to 67 in the summertime, no matter where he lives.
He's sitting there looking at all these people having these junior days this weekend, and he's just laughing. He's just laughing. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
It is. It's absolutely crazy. All right, some guys that are not laughing right now are Georgia football players because Rusty, it's winter workout time, and Georgia put out a video yesterday talking about working in silence. Man, I'm telling you what, it makes my stomach, it makes my legs hurt, makes my body sore, and makes me kind of want to vomit just thinking about it. Just thinking about everything that those. I mean, because these are not for the faint of heart, and this is where the building the 2024 team really begins.
Yep, and so they started their little team runs and those workouts. I think next week is when they start the 6 a.m. workouts going into the month of February, and that just rips the soul out of me thinking about 6 a.m. and running bleachers in Sanford Stadium and on what we used to call county fair.
County fair
with the different stations inside there, and it's no joke. And all those recruits, all those guys are number one in the nation, and they're going to find out that college football, it is for real now. It is for real, and there'll be nobody hugging you. Kirby Smart will have that damn bullhorn, and he will be. I can't even imagine what will come out of his mouth at 6 a.m. And Stacy Searles and Mike Bobo and Trey Scott and all them guys leading stations, and it will be. Whew, I can't even imagine. But it is right. That starts the season, and those kids that are doing it will understand. Then it is so much year round. I know some of these players, and it is crazy, man. What they do in college football year round, as opposed to even NFL football. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I had lunch with an NFL player last week. This guy's played in NFL for a long time, and he's still in the NFL. And I kind of asked about the off season. He's like, dude, we don't see each other until the mini camp in May. We work out on our own, and then we go to camp in July. I mean, it's not
get together if they want to. They may get together for a few days if they want to.
But think about the different structure in that with college versus NFL, and that's why your ass don't last if you're not working. So, but with these college kids, man, they are on these guys. It is nutrition. It's weight loss. You have to check. You have to weigh every week. Kirby Smart sees the weigh-ins like every week. He gets that sheet, and he knows, man, if you're not hitting your weight and where your target is. And they put those GPS vests on every player so you can't take a rep off. I mean, it is. Rusty Mansell would not survive in this.
It's not all too different than the college experience for a regular student and kind of what that does to prepare you for the real world, because you basically I mean, it's more grueling, don't get me wrong, but it's like you got to learn what's important. That's what kind of college is all about. You got to learn how to learn and learn what's important. Mm-hmm. And that's what Georgia's teaching them with the nutrition, with the hard work. Like, this is what it's going to take to get to the next level and to stay at the next level. Mm-hmm. I had a player tell me not too long ago, I asked him, I was like, man, what about those winter workouts? How crazy are those? And he goes, man, he said, the crazy thing about that is, you don't get, like, you're out there and you feel like you're going to die, right? Like, you feel like you are going down. And the only person, there's not a coach, there's not a support staff, there's not anybody else that's going to put their hand on your shoulder and say, hey, breathe, you're going to be all right. The only player to do that is your teammate. And so, and that's another massive part of this, is suffering together and doing all of that stuff. That's a big part of it. Is like, hey, man, listen, the only guy that's going to basically kind of stand there and tell me it's going to be all right, I'm not going to die today, is my teammate, because the coaches ain't going to do it.
That's those upperclassmen too. Those upperclassmen telling those guys, hey, get your ass in bed, quit messing around, and be ready to go. But it's different. It's these kids in high school now, they're training year round. They're not about to go through what they're about to go through. But the one thing is different with Kirby and what's kind of evolved. You remember Georgia used to do the mat drills, and that's what I talked about. Well, a couple of people I know that were kind of involved with that, and mat drills got you in peak shape in February. Well, that's not the plan and goal here.
Right. Yeah.
Smart wants you in peak shape in August.
Build up to it.
He wants you to build up to that, and they have a process of how they've done things over the years and trying to get you ready for August. Where's your weight going to be, and where's our maximum performance out of this guy coming into August? So, unless that's just the way things change. Everybody copied a form of mat drills. Even a lot of high schools still do mat drills, and that's still working out. But the difference with Kirby Smart with his guys and what he brought into Georgia was, I don't want them in peak at the end of February. I want it in peak at the end of July. I want to comment real quick. Bobby Mills says your take was so wrong about Tay yesterday. No, it wasn't wrong. So I live kind of in Cedartown, that area, and they told me last week that Kirby Smart was going to be at Cedartown on Monday. So that trip was planned long before he decommitted. Never said he was not going to end up at Georgia. It's just how things are. But what that does, Bobby, and not to call you out, I'm going to explain myself. What that tells you is Georgia's not giving up on him. And Kirby Smart had planned to go there last week and wound up going on Monday. So, listen, these are young kids. These are young kids, and they're getting all these visits in, and people are loving them up and all those things. But just want to kind of say there, I didn't say that this guy's not going to end up at Georgia. It also tells you that Georgia is going to go after him as an in-state kid. So that's what I always say. Follow the visits, man. I mean, kid keeps going to Georgia, keeps coming back, and a lot of times I kind of tell you what's going on. But want to touch on that one. So, Bobby, glad you're here this morning, brother. And Uncle Hartley is checking in. Evan Grimes is on it now. That man he's locked in.
Evan Grimes is a man among boys when it comes to internet social media, brother.
Question there from is that Shaheed Huckabee?
Yeah.
As an opening at DC for Glenn Schuman. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Glenn Schuman, obviously they came at him pretty hard twice last year, and you see.
And wasn't the only team that came after him either.
I know. And then you look at the raise he got, and it kind of tells you last year, that tells you all you need to know. A lot of times you don't hear about it publicly, but when you guys do those raises and like you get the contracts in like March or April, whenever, Jake, when y'all put those contracts out and you see somebody get a $200,000 or $300,000 a year raise, well, they had a job offer. You know what I mean? So, or something, and Kirby Smart had to kind of say, hey, but Glenn Schuman, DC, Philadelphia right now, don't see it. I think Glenn Schuman is, and I've said it a million times, is he going to stay at Georgia forever? He is not. But Glenn Schuman is very close to Kirby Smart, and he's watched Kirby Smart's path and the decisions that Kirby Smart made leading up from him leaving Alabama to go to Georgia. I think Glenn Schuman is going to be very picky in where he goes. I think he just turned 34 years old. I know people think he's 40, but Glenn Schuman just turned 34, I believe. He started at Georgia at 26 years old. It was insane.
I think he turns 35 this spring. I think it's like March or April or May. I asked Claude like way back in the day because I was trying to do like a full breakdown of the Georgia coaching staff when Kirby Smart hired his first coaching staff. And I remember he was 26 years old at the time.
I didn't know who he was. Put him on the road. I was like, what?
Yeah, he was 26 years old at the time. And I believe his birthday is like April or May. So I think he's about to turn 35. Yeah. He's getting old as hell. I mean, I don't know what they're going to have to run him off. He's getting so old. So maybe they can get you a little younger at defensive coordinator, but he's always going to be a coveted guy. He's one of these guys you're going to have to watch out for every offseason. But man, listen, you'll talk about somebody that handles it the right way, that doesn't walk around flirting with every single thing, and you don't hear his name just smeared all over the place, involved with everything. I mean, listen, I don't know who his agent is. You may know that. You may not want to talk about. I don't know. I have no idea, but I do know this. Whoever it is, they handle things in a way that is very beneficial to Georgia every year.
Yeah, well, he's getting paid. Two small kids. wife here in Athens, and I think his in-laws live close. So he's going to be very picky about where he goes, but don't fool yourself. This guy's going to continue to be a hot commodity as he goes on, and don't know when, don't know if it's 3 years from now, if it's 10 years from now, or it's 12 years from now. At some point, there'll be some discussions with him in the University of Alabama, probably as a head coach, because of the ties he has. He's an Alabama graduate. His wife's an Alabama graduate. I think both his in-laws are Alabama graduates. He's got several family members that went to University of Alabama. So there's some strong ties there, but that'll be one day down the line. But at some point, his name will be seriously, mentioned, if and when that job's ever open at some point. But, right now, man, he is firmly entrenched in Athens and has been. He's doing a hell of a job because that linebacker room, oh, my goodness. I mean, the guys that left, Javon Dumas-Johnson was all freaking SEC and left.
Yeah.
Because of kind of knows what's there. You know what I mean? And Xavier Sorey, who was a 5-star at some services, who's going to be a really good player at Arkansas. You know what I mean? I mean, those were really good players. I think Glenn Schuman continues to stack his room, and he calls a place. He is the defensive coordinator. Let's not be. He calls it. So kudos to him.
Yeah, no doubt. And Georgia's got a great staff. You got a great staff. People are going to come up for that great staff, and that's just how it is. But I think it's just impressive how I know that there are opportunities for Glenn Schuman there every offseason, and nobody ever hears about all of them. Because he's very professional in the way he handles that, and has done a really good job since getting to Georgia. Hey, listen, if you're checking us out for the first time, we appreciate it. Hit like and subscribe. Come on over and see us over at DawgsHQ. We got notes, we got insider stuff, we got off-season content. We got a lot to get to for the Georgia show, and we'll get back to it on Thursday around the same time. Y'all take it easy.